I'm an ordained minister in the United Church of Canada for 30 years, trying to retire. 2 years ago, I took over a half-time congregation at the Ebenezer United Church. Ebenezer is actually in Tay Township. It's about 5 miles from the vigil site, but it is across the township line. And my people have been involved with this issue for the full length of time. 25 years, 26 years now. And I went to the church early in 2009. I am going to share with you a little bit about what the church did officially and informally, but also some reflections and observations upon what that means, particularly to us as a worshiping Christian community. One of the nice things about being the United Church minister is it's not my job to tell the members of my congregation what to do or what to think or what to believe. It is my job to give them information so that they can make up their own mind in these matters. And it's also my job to make sure they understand what I say. So I don't make them believe, but I do try to make them understand what I'm going to say. I want to begin by showing you a PowerPoint presentation for about 6 minutes that shares another perspective on what happened at Dump Site 41 since early 2009. So that's my perspective on dump site 41. I want to share with you a few reflections as it affects our church. What did we learn? Well, we learned that in May, a perfect storm began converging around dump site 41. The original opponents of local residents, farmers, and concerned citizens began a renewed offensive around the work and leadership of Stephen Ogden. Maud Barlow and the Council of Canadians began to object to the potential danger to a valuable Canadian resource. Ebenezer United Church began to make its position known locally and throughout Toronto Conference, and eventually through General Council of the United Church. Several unions became involved. The Anishinaabe Women Caregivers of the Waters of the Beausoleil First Nations established their vigil. And of prime importance, and I don't believe this can be overstated just how important it is. Investigative journalist Dale Goldhawk began asking questions on his daily radio program, and the more questions he tried to ask of responsible officials, the less responsive and coherent Simcoe County answers became, and the deeper he tried to probe. It's impossible to overemphasize and easy to underestimate the importance of Dale Goldhawk's contribution simply by him trying to do his job and the publicity that he attracted for the cause. Even the Ontario Provincial Police got into the act. Caught between a rock and a hard place, they did their job sensitively and with common sense. And I believe that God used their actions to forward the cause of those opposed to dump site 41. Eventually, the council bowed to reason and common sense and suspended work on dump site 41 for a year. Later, they agreed to permanently terminate it, but they didn't offer to relinquish the certificate of approval. That happened earlier this year. The concern for garbage disposal remains, and the concern about water has been reawakened in the minds of many of us. Consider what have we learned? We've learned the power of one, the power of Stephen Ogden for 25 years, chipping away, asking questions, seeking answers, smiling, filtering through papers and information, finding and exploiting inconsistencies, never losing his temper, and never getting flustered. The same thing with Dale Goldhawk. Two men each working from their own perspective for their own reasons, cooperatively seeking truth and common sense. We learned about the importance of respect and courtesy, of people working through the system with tenacity and persistence. We learned about the importance of a vigil. The First Nations encampment was a vigil, not a protest center. People who would have tried to ratchet up the element of protest, both native and non-native, were politely and firmly told that violence and illegal protest would not be tolerated. And at times, that was a real danger. We also learned the importance of prayer in every language, and prayer to however the unmoved first mover and creator of all life may be addressed. We learned about the fundamental similarity and symbolism between the First Nations sacred fire and our Christ candle or burning bush or other sacred symbolism of flame and fire. We learned that there are caring and responsible people in all authoritative acts of life: police officers, judicial appointments, civil servants, lawyers, politicians, just as we learned that there are people who leave us shaking our heads. We learned that it is possible to fight City Hall and to win. Most of all, we learned that God moves in a mysterious way, His wonders to perform, and that God uses the most unlikely agents and situations to perform God's perfect and complex will. I want you to think for a moment about the relationship that developed between the native vigil keepers and local residents. Had God chosen to bring to an end the intransigence of Simcoe County Council 2 years previously, the members of Ebenezer United Church and other area residents would have missed out on a wonderful experience of sharing life with one group of Native Canadian or Native peoples. We would have missed out on some wonderful stories and opportunities to interact with true equals bound together by a common concern. Consider the informal partnership of First Nations people and local residents and farmers. Probably for the first time in modern history in Ontario, First Nations people and local residents stood shoulder to shoulder in unblinking support for each other, together on the same side of an issue important to both peoples. And God looked down and called it good. And it was good. And any parents who loves to see their children get along and work on a project together in harmony and hope should understand the contentment and pride of God looking at His people collaborating together in the heat and in the wet of the summer of 2009. God was present as surely at the Saturday night potluck suppers at the vigil site as much as at any formal church communion celebration. For where people of faith and goodwill break bread and slake thirst together, God is present. As United Church people, we brought to this issue our faith that we are to live with respect in creation. We brought our commitment to wholeness, order, and good government, and stood firm for our principles and beliefs, yet prepared to go to jail if necessary, while committed to peaceful legal action. I point out that none of our church members charged with committing an unlawful act was ever convicted, and each would have been able to present a credible defense that might have resulted in the charges being dismissed. Now, I'm not talking about everybody, but I am talking about our church members and members of the First Nations community involved in this particular struggle. What was that defense? I don't know. That's Peter's job, and he's here to tell you about that. But here's the question for me. Was the summer of 2009 a spontaneous arousal of public pressure, a perfect storm come together accidentally? or spontaneously? I don't believe so. Instead, it was a carefully choreographed symphony created by God, drawing widely disparate groups and individuals to create a unified force to ensure that righteousness would prevail. Remember, a coincidence is when God chooses to work anonymously. What began as a routine political process a quarter of a century ago, objected to by a few local residents, some but by no means all of whom were connected with the Ebenezer congregation. People who were dismissed as being insignificant and selfish has now resulted in a powerful and very public demonstration of the victory of right over wrong, of hope over cynicism, of common sense over bureaucracy, and life over death. Can you think of a better way to describe the attributes of God? The victory of the people at Site 41 truly was a miracle. But like most miracles, this one might not have happened without human involvement, resulting in unexpected results. Thank you.